Plus, I tried to make sure that you knew that Jesus was real. He wasn't a fairy tale. He wasn't, any of those other things.
We went to church where it was, you had Sunday school and intercessory prayer, and then you had a service, and then there was an evening service, and then there was choir rehearsals, and it was usher board practices, and it was prayer meetings, and it was Bible studies, and it was like every day of the week it was at church, and you were just like, come on now, Jesus, come on. Can I get a break? I think I'm going to speak for all of us, as in the group of siblings that I belong to.
It's okay. You normally do.
Oh, we didn't want to go.
I understand.
Okay, guys, we are back with another installment of our Moms of Ministry Moments for the month of May, where we are showcasing some very amazing women of God. We are giving them the opportunity to talk about their experiences and what being in ministry has been like for them. Each of these women that are being interviewed are very, very special to me. And this time it is no exception. It is close to Mother's Day, so of course I brought my mom. This is Pastor Dr. Marcia Barnwell, and I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself however you see fit.
I think that you did a good job of doing that already. I am your mom and pastor and doctor and all of those things. But most of all, I like to introduce myself as just simply a child of God.
So we are going to kick this off. Every woman is going to be given the first question that's the same, because I think that foundational question means a lot to our faith as a whole. And then we're going to lead through a conversation, see where it takes us, and then we're going to end off with advice. So first and foremost, how did you find Jesus? And I am saying Jesus specifically because there's a whole lot of people that know God, but not a lot of people that have that very finite distinction that makes us a follower of Christ. So how did you find Jesus?
I think that Jesus found me. I think that when I was searching, he found me. My background is that I was raised in a specific religion that didn't honor him like I knew he needed to be honored. So one day I prayed a prayer that said, God, help me to know you like you want me to know you. And when I did, Jesus answered. I say it like this. When people say, I know it was the blood, they sing that song, and they say, one day when I was lost, Jesus died on the cross. I say, one day when I was lost, Jesus called me to the cross. And that is how I found him, because a lot of religions have a lot of stuff, but how they treat Jesus determines for me if they'll work. So he found me. I didn't find him.
So what made you look?
I believe we all have a longing for God. We're born with it. And if you come to a place where when you begin to recognize that, you recognize that there's more. And from what I had heard and what had been demonstrated to me, I had a desire on the inside for more. And that more was the reality of Christ and the power of his resurrection.
So if you are experiencing a longing of any sort, don't call that dude back. Put the ice cream down. Do not run. Don't DoorDash. Pray.
Yes.
You're probably, the reason why you are struggling to find that thing that seems to be working for you is because you're looking naturally and you need to be looking spiritually.
I agree.
As I said, this is my mom. There are a lot of us. People who know me know there are a lot of us. There are 6 of us in total. And we always kind of had a house full of kids. Yes. So how did you manage your growth in God and a family, or manage us in church because we didn't want to go?
I'm going to say it like this. Chore charts and bedtimes. Because chore charts kept the managing of the house together. Everybody knew who was supposed to do what. So that always helped. And then bedtime was a time when all 6 were down. After we got passed through the mommy, I need some waters and I got to go to bathrooms, the house was still. And in that time, I could take time to seek the more of God that I needed. You wake up in the morning and you pray and you do all of those things. But when the house was still in the evenings, that's when I found my time. But managing it all, it just came. For everything that God gives us to do, he gives us to do, he empowers us to be able to do it. So I can't say I did it because of anything I did. I just listened to his examples in the Bible and his word telling me, okay, do it this way. And so I did. You know that there were a lot of things that I did raising you all that seemed questionable to others, but I stood based on what I know God told for me to do, and I think that it paid off.
Okay. So, bedtimes are important. That's one of those things that I'm gonna say us. I don't want to call myself a millennial, but I think I am. But us newer moms, bedtimes are kind of negotiable because we had such strict bedtimes, and that's one of those things that you either find yourself waking up very early in the morning to have me time or trying to get your kids to bed to do it. So make sure that you carve out some me time every day. It's not a weekly thing. It's not, I'll get it in the future, maybe next year, but like make sure that you have a spot, even if it's 30 minutes or an hour, where you can take some time and really build yourself.
I do believe that a lot of people think that bedtimes are for kids, but bedtimes are as much for parents as they are for kids. It sets order for them so they can wake up and be ready for the day, but it also gives you that time, like you said, to be able to retreat and have me time and do what needs to be done without having to stop to see to the needs of a little one.
When we're talking about seeing to the needs of little ones, being there's 6 of us, there are a lot of personalities, a lot of talents, a lot of giftings, a lot of things that are unique to each kid. How did you manage that in church? How did you make room for them, for your kids in church?
Well, it was a whole row. Okay. It was a whole row. We took up a pew because, like you said, there weren't just my kids. There were daycare kids. There were little sisters. There were cousins. Always a lot of kids around me. But the way that we did this was I tried to make church as important for you guys as it was for me. And I tried to do it at your level. I tried to make sure that when we were doing things, it wasn't just we got to go to church again, but to add some excitement to it. So you guys sang on the choir. You guys ushered. You helped me when I taught Sunday school because, I taught Sunday school forever. But you helped me, and when we were making charts, y'all got to help me to color and to do the crafts, and all of those things made you guys interested in going to church. Plus, I tried to make sure that you knew that Jesus was real. He wasn't a fairy tale. He wasn't, any of those other things. So it made you want to go.
I think I'm going to speak for all of us, as in the group of siblings that I belong to.
It's okay. You normally do.
Oh, we didn't want to go.
I understand.
We didn't want to go for a lot of times. We didn't want to go because we went to church where it was you had Sunday school and intercessory prayer, and then you had a service, and then there was an evening service, and then there was choir rehearsals, and it was usher board practices, and it was prayer meetings, and it was Bible studies, and it was like every day of the week it was at church, and you were just like, come on now, Jesus, come on. Can I get a break? We were required.
It was absolutely a requirement.
We were required.
I am not. I hate to cut you off, but this is one of my things. I do not understand how people make church optional. I don't see how church can be optional for your children. I think that they reach an age when they leave your house where church can be optional. But I don't understand that. And I get that you didn't want to go. And there were times, believe it or not, that I may not have wanted to go. But there was a requirement. Because as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And in all of that pressing and in all of that pushing, I hope you at least learn that God is not optional. It's not about how you feel. He's a constant in your life, even when you don't want to go. And we had some times, we did, but it was never optional. And I don't understand making it optional because it's so essential. How can we take something that we say is as essential as Jesus and then make it optional to our children?
So you all see where we were and how required it was. But what I've taken away from that as a mom now is that part of it is training my kid and what I want them to model, what I want them to do. So we absolutely, it is a requirement for my kids to go.
Yes.
You don't have to like it, but you just have to be awake.
Yes.
You don't have to sit in the first row, but you can count 4. I got one more past you.
You had 3.
We can count 4 rows.
Yes.
You can go 4 rows back at our church. It's a little smaller. So I think it does. And then for me, now I'm involved in the youth ministry and I'm kind of outgrowing that space. So I'm going to switch gears with the question and you mentioned teaching Sunday school. So when did being a mom and helping out with kids shift to ministry for you?
It took forever. Because if you have 6 kids plus 3, 4, 5, you already have the majority of the kids in the church. So they just add more to you because children must be something you're good at. And it took a good while, to move from children's church to being able to teach and being able to preach. And in some cases, you sometimes even have to leave where you were to get the opportunity to open up. And that was my case. I was never stopped from participating, but I was limited in how much I could participate. And a lot of times it was because people just didn't know, kind of what to do with me, because you're good with the kids, but there were other issues that sometimes pushed it. But my turn came, my switch came when I went to a church that could recognize there is more in there. And when I reached that pastor who said, nope, his words were, I'm going to ride you like a horse. I'm like, I don't know what that means. But it meant that he wasn't going to let me hide with the kids. Okay. Because I was taking the kids further than some of the adults were. And I think that caused me to be able to get that open door, because they're like, wait a minute, these kids are taking us really far. Now, I don't want to devalue working with the kids. Let me say that. Because what you do with kids matters. I have children that I have worked with when I had daycare, and they go home praying, and because they went home saying their grace, it caused their mom to recognize the need to go to church. And one little boy came and says, my mommy got saved. And it was because of what we do. So I don't want to devalue working with the kids. What we put in kids carry them. I know it's things you learn way back that carry you now. And if I get any of my 6 kids and I go Genesis, Exodus, they know Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy,
Joshua, Judges, Ruth. Yes.
So I don't want to devalue it. But my turn came when working with the kids. I made up in my mind that wherever I am, I'm going to give God everything. If it's teaching the kids, I'm going to give it if that's all that I have, these are going to be the smartest little Christian kids you ever met. And so I began to teach them at that level. And when I did, the pastor recognized that the kids were starting to surpass the others. And he's like, I need to get you over here. And that's how that transition started for me, because I just loaded those kids up with everything they can handle. And it got me recognized.
I'm one of those people that doesn't have a very visible gift. I don't sing. I don't have a very overwhelming personality. I'm not the person you look for when you walk in the door. I understand and recognize that about myself, and I am okay with it. So for a lot of pastors, especially males, didn't really know what to do with me because I don't fit what they understood women to be.
Yes.
So in situations like that, have you faced that, and how do you move beyond that?
Yes, I have. I faced it quite a bit, where I've had people say to me, I don't know what to do with you because you don't fit. I'm not a hack and hollering preacher. Mm-hmm. I'm a teacher. And if you put me in the pulpit, I'm going to teach. So what I did was do what God gifted me to do. I teach. And in that, you develop a following. What I found is when they gave me the opportunity to teach, people were like, well, wait a minute, can you give us more? So I'm not that overwhelming personality either. I'm none of that. I'm so good by myself being me. But with the anointing, you can do whatever it is God has called you to do. So however you go and whatever you do, if you allow God to lead you, He'll show you, and it'll, as they say, your gift will make room for you. And people will notice and say, wait a minute, can you do this? Well, why don't you try this? And one day, thank God for Jesus, I was done taking care of the kids and, making costumes for the play.
I went to a service recently where there was a young man who is a preacher. He was like, I'm a pastor, and I really wish that people would stop calling me to preach at these youth services. I'm a whole pastor with a church. I want to go to convocation. Is there ever a time where you felt that what you had inside of you, or you felt like God was pulling you to do more than you were being allowed to do?
Always. Okay. From when I was teaching the kids, when I was younger, I had the blessing of looking very young. So it meant that people didn't know what to do with me. If you're really going to deal with this in a real way, you have to deal with the women of the church as much as the men of the church. And in my younger days, everything about me threatened the women because I had 6 kids. Okay. It made people like wonder. And it didn't help that I brought other daycare kids with me. So at times they didn't know. Finally, somebody got the guts to ask me which one of these kids are mine. Because they couldn't all possibly be. So yes, I've had to deal with men being a problem, women being a problem, because some people just hadn't moved past their carnal selves to actually see and recognize the gift. But what I have found is anytime there was a time that I wanted to do something, I prayed. This has been something I have done from the beginning. If I had an issue about something, I prayed, and if I couldn't get the pastor to see it, I can talk to God, and God would get them to see it. There's a time I got, okay, y'all know I'm a praiser. I praise. I praised and I praised until I danced so much that I got put off the usher board. They told me you dance too much. You can't help people. You dance too much. And I was heartbroken because the only thing I could do was usher. I was allowed to do that. I outgrew the kids. I was allowed to usher, but my praise caused a problem for people. But I knew it was genuine. And so I prayed. I said, God, if it's me, let me stop. And if it's you, I prayed that you get the usher president and the vice president and let them feel what I feel.
Okay.
And for a solid month, they were rolling under the pews. They had to be wrapped in sheets. All of these things this is a true story. And at the end of that month, the pastor called me back and Sister Barnwell, God told me to put you back on the usher board. So God always fought my battles for me. And I learned a long time ago, if I shut my mouth and let him do it, it turns out better. Because if I get in it, I get in my feelings. Now I'm crying and other people are upset and all of these things are going on. But there's nothing I ever wanted to do that he didn't make room for me to do. So you might say, stop calling me to children's events, but you might think that you're ready for that convention, but Holy Spirit might know you need a little bit more cooking. What I found is if we bake in that oven long enough, we'll come out ready, and when we do, we don't have to worry about it.
I'm gonna write that down too. Stay in the oven.
Yes. He's preparing us, and we just have to let him do that.
Yeah, I got that down. Stay in the oven, because I think sometimes we do. We feel it, we can see it, we can dream it. It's been prophesied, and we are just right there ready. And we end up looking like a baby taking their first steps. That baby knew they could walk. They done seen people walk. They're confident and they take their first 2 steps and hit that ground. And what you really don't want to do is hit the ground, especially in those arenas, because you may not get the same people to open doors again because they saw you fall.
That's right.
And then you may not have the confidence. You will end up longer trying to rebuild your confidence than it took to just get there. So we're gonna stay in the oven and we're gonna pray and let God fight our battles and not get into the back and forth, not get into the she know better or it. We're gonna let God fight these battles for us.
And let me say this: you can spend time trying to prove yourself, and you just aggravate people. And sometimes we don't know, we don't realize it. You're so busy trying to prove yourself. A lot of times they see what's going on. And they're saying, let me just come a little bit more. Just come a little bit more. But for you, it's like, I'm here. And if you try to prove yourself, then you wind up you can make a mess out of it when you were just about to get called on. Now it's like, Mother May I, you got to go all the way back to the beginning.
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, kind of. We're going to stay in that realm. But as a mom and understanding that you have kids with different giftings and different abilities, a lot of times we see parents push their kids into these offices based off of what they may see for them. How do you do that or not do that if you feel like it's their role for the future?
I think that you still have to let kids be kids and you have to let them mature into roles. I see people who allow a lot of things that I think are premature, and then you have burnout. And then you have kids who are like, no, I really don't want to do that. And it's just because they were introduced to it too young. I have drummers, for instance. I have 2 drummers. They drummed. I recognized their rhythm. I allowed them to play on pots and pans for a while. Then I got them lessons. And when they began to play in church, I let them play a little at a time. I didn't let them just, oh, get him, he can do this, he can do that, she can do this, she can do that. And I let them make the decision, but I let them make the decision with knowledge. So
Okay.
if you're going to go, this is what it's going to require for you to do. Are you ready to do that? And if you're not, then we won't. I think that you see the giftings. I believe if you're in God and God has given you the gift of children, if you seek Him, He'll show you how to raise them so that they fit in. And as I look at my kids, I knew who was going to be the hairdresser. I knew who was going to be the finance lady. I knew who was going to be the HVAC. I knew who was going to be the cook. I knew all of that because I asked God what to do, and you nurture them in those areas. But because I knew that you were going to be the finance lady because you were good with numbers, I didn't say no, you couldn't dance. I allowed you to still live and do. My sons, you remember my buddy. People gave me a fit about my buddy.
Oh my goodness.
But it allowed them to be able to develop that side that was necessary for them to be able to deal with their children. But I didn't let him, take Buddy and plait his hair. He rode on Tonka trucks. Okay? He was his friend, not his. So when you're raising kids, it is important that you know the giftings, you seek God, and He'll show you how to do it. I'm trying to tell you, these little people don't come with instruction manuals.
They do not.
And so you have to seek God about what to do and how to do it. And he never failed me. If I was ever unsure about a thing, He allowed me to know how to handle each one. Seeing the gifts, acknowledging the gifts, and when you see them, you begin to pray, God, how do I mature this gift in them? God, how do I help them to do this without letting other people steal it from them? Because people will take your kid and change everything. For instance, I watch people who have kids that sing, and they enjoy singing and they like singing, and before you know it, they let somebody talk them in to enter them into some kind of a group, and next thing you know, and they're off doing things that they really don't want to do, and they're missing the fun things.
Okay.
When you were little, your grandma used to put you in pageants. You remember them pageants? One day you said, I don't want to do it anymore. And you know what I said? She doesn't have to do it anymore. Let's do something different. So you have to
Princess
listen.
pose.
You have to listen to kids, and you have to listen to God. He'll show you. It sounds really cliche, but honestly, when it came to raising you all, I think that we didn't have a cacophony of foolishness because I asked God, what do I do with these little people? I ain't always get it right, but I didn't always get it wrong either.
When you see spiritual giftings in your children and they are contrary to the life that they're living, we're going to say pray is the answer. But how do you manage that as a mom and as a ministry leader when you see your kid operating opposite of who they're supposed to be?
Well, you're still a parent. So depending on their age, you still have to correct, you still have to guide, you still have to instruct. And you pray. And then you let them know. I never stop. If you have kids that are doing things contrary to what they know to be true, as a ministry leader, you don't get to change the rules because it's your kid. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I want to say. If it's contrary to what God said for everybody else, it's contrary for your kid too. And that can be a challenge, but you still have to not hold back. You have to not, you can't be to a point where you say, well, I'm not going to touch that subject because, people know that about my kid. No, touch it, teach it, explain it, and hold the standard and love them until they get it.
Okay.
You have to love people. We all come from somewhere. And sometimes we forget that we were tore up from the floor up. Okay? And then we want everybody else to be perfect. So you have to, sometimes I think what we really miss is loving people through it. I didn't say allow them to do it. I said love them through it. You love them as you continue to teach them. And that's how you bring kids up, especially if they have a gift. This is what, I never hid what I felt God had for you guys to do. I never hid it from you, but I didn't say, okay, now we have to be so strict in what we do that you can't breathe. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that. So you have to let them grow. But the biggest thing is just because it doesn't become okay because your kid is doing it. You have to love them through it, but you have to let them know change needs to happen or you're going to miss it.
On the opposite side of that, mm-hmm. What is it to see your kid in the arenas or in the spaces, in the gifting, in the ministry that you saw or you knew was possible if they walked in it?
It is so awesome. Can I just say that? It is so awesome. I'll use you as an example. To know, even from a kid, the leadership that was in you, to know from a kid all of the things that you had in you, and to see God bringing it to light now, I am your biggest cheerleader, whether you know it or not, okay? I tell people, that's my kid, okay? That's my kid. Yes, I am proud, but it is something to be at a place where you can continue. You never get to stop encouraging. You never get to stop teaching and training and helping, but you do it from a different arena. It's awesome to see your kids walking in giftings. When I see my son sit to the drums and watch him let God use him, it is awesome to see that, because I know it was the vision that God showed me. And when I see you sit and conduct these interviews and be all online and all of those things, I'm like, go, God, go. Because it's something to see the seed that planted, to see it grow to fruition.
So I'm going to ask one more big question before we go into our final question here. And this question is, because you have now moved up in ministry and are at the level of pastor, so you're pastoring a church, and you have a husband who is a bishop, but how do you make that work when, like, there's a lot of times a hierarchy between men and women? How does that work for you to pastor a church that your husband attends?
Okay, first, we are in a reformation that is not hung up on women pastors. Okay, let's say that. I want to say that we didn't just, elect me and go. We sit under authority and under leadership, and that leadership recognizes women pastors. So me as a pastor, when I step into the church as the pastor, that's who I am. I am the person responsible for shepherding God's people, including him. Okay, my mom also sits there with me, and I have to shepherd her too. When we are home, I still fix a plate. I still, make dinner. I still do that. We don't get to leave off the responsibilities or the expectations of a wife because we are a pastor. I think that that's where some of the problem comes in, because women take the title, and when the Bible mentions usurping authority, that's what it's talking about. Even in church, I don't usurp authority. I'm the kind of pastor that asks more than tells anyway. And we have a balance that when I'm here, then that's what it is. We just had a conversation with the praise team, and he leads on the praise team. And we had the conversation and said, look, guys, and everybody looked at me for a minute. I said, no. This is not Marcia. This is Pastor Barnwell, and this is what I need to have done. So he respects me in the office of pastor because I respect him in the office of husband.
Okay, so see, there's balance there.
Yes.
There's a plan there. It's I can be pastor at church but wife at home. And when you separate the roles, that's what works.
Yeah, it does. They're separate, they're together. We went out. There was a time when I went out and I spoke at another church. And when we went to the fellowship hall, I still made his plate. He was in his bishop's purple and I had on my collar. But I still, you have to just recognize each other. He respects me, I respect him. It's only when you can't keep a balance of respect that it becomes a problem, I believe. And it's not a problem for anybody else, because I promote him, he promotes me.
So I am going to close this whole thing out with my favorite question. If you have any advice for women following you in ministry, not just me and my siblings, but just women as a whole who are entering this thing, who are understanding their call, who are at a place now where it's time to step out and do the work, what advice do you have?
My advice would be to be humble. Because if we remain humble, God can exalt us. And trust the gift that God gave you. And don't let anybody convince you that it's not there. If you trust the gift, God will bring it forth. The only time we stunt ourselves is when we fail to trust the gift that God gave us. We begin to let people, because I have gone through times where people have tried to convince me that I'm not who I know God is telling me I am. And I've had to go into my closet and talk to him about it again and say, God, are you sure about this? Because they said. And I had to grow to the point that I had to remain humble. We talked about the whole plight, if you will, of women in ministry. Humbleness gets it. Aggressiveness won't work. Stay humble and trust God to do it. There's not a time that I did not trust God and his word that said that my gift would make room for me. And remain. Humble is just it, because if you do that, people can't fight with it. When you do that, if people are coming at you telling you it doesn't work, you humble yourself. And remember that meekness doesn't mean weakness. You can be meek and not be weak. So stand for what you know to be right in God and give God the opportunity to do it. Don't try to force your way through, because then people will determine you got a Jezebel spirit, you got all of this. Because you just feel that urge. I think sometimes people forget that fire shut up in your bones. It'll push you. But if you allow God, he'll open the door and it'll happen for you.
So I'm going to allow your words to be the last words on this. I am not going to add anything to it. I hope you got your notes, because I have mine. I'm going to stay in the oven and and I'm going to be humble about some things. Yes. And I'm not, that went bars. Meekness does not mean weakness. Bars. Gold star next to it. I am going to wrap this up. I so appreciate you coming to visit and being a part of this and taking the time to give us your advice and your story and talk to us. We, of course, are going to be promoting Remnant's Refuge Fellowship, which is the church that she pastors, yes. Along with my father, who is the bishop there. And you'll get all their info. So if you're ever traveling through North Carolina, come see us. You are welcome there. Yes. And, of course, all the info will be posted.
Thank you.
And, again, we appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Please feel free to jump into the comments with any questions that you have. If I can't answer them, I'll make sure that she does. Yes. And we will close out. We still have some more amazing women coming. Yes. And I am just excited for whatever else is in store for us.
Awesome.
So you guys be blessed.